Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, and I have another review for you. This is going to be from Heavy Metal Magazine, Never Never, issues number 4 and 5. I'm going to break them down for you, the ending of Never Never, and a special reason why I'm doing it. And we'll get to that at the very end, but I do want to tell you, you do want to stick around to the very end, especially if you're interested in this story, which I highly recommend. This is one of my top reads from 2020, and without a doubt, it was a wonderful story altogether. I had even put it on my list at only 3 issues in, and still, the ending was dope as hell. So let's get into it. It is written by McCann, art by Phil Buckenham. I see we got colors by Agnese, Pozza, and then we got letters by David Withers, and covers by Christopher Lair. Let's see. Going back to the wonderful land of Never Never, it is basically a dark retelling of the original, Peter Pan and that kind of story, and that's kind of what you need to know going into the story. Is just kind of the main basics of the characters, and that kind of stuff. But basically, this takes place in a land called Never Never, where this version of Peter Pan is an evil version of Peter Pan. Honestly, going into Peter Pan, the story itself, I always saw Peter Pan as the villain, taking away kids, to live off on this, fairy tale land where they live off forever. But in the hindsight, as a parent, they lose their kids, kind of thing, never to be seen again. So in this story, it follows not Peter Pan, but it's his name is Petro, and I'm pretty sure it's because they couldn't get, they had to switch around some things for copyright and liability and stuff like that. But basically, Peter Pan is Petro. They have the main character we follow is Winter, and then there's Tiger Lily, and there is Captain Hook, but he is known as the Butcher in this story. He does have a cut off hand, his left hand I think it is, but it's it is a butcher's knife. It's not really a hook. It does have a hook indentation into the butcher's knife. But there is the crocodile. It does have a clock tied to it. But without further ado, let's kind of get into it, because that's the kind of the setup and everything. We've been following Winter from the start. Petro brought her to Neverland, kind of fooling her like he has so many, bringing her to this land. And then as soon as he got her here, he tried to feed her to the crocodile with no rhyme, no reason. In the beginning, he was seen to be this nice guy, and then as soon as they flew to Never Never, just like they do in the original, cartoon or book, he gets there and tries to feed her to the crocodile, and ever since then, she's just been on escape mode, trying to get away from Patria. Let's see, on Never Never, no one can die, but to the hind sense, because there's most of Peter Pan and his crew are evil. You really can die, and it's kind of like zombies kind of thing. I mean, you can get decapitated, but your decapitated head keeps on going, kind of thing. They mention starvation a lot, the land has been poisoned, there's not really any food, but because they can't die, they're constantly starving and trying to eat stuff. It just doesn't work. But at this point, Winter has hooked up with the Butcher, and he basically, it's kind of like the same thing where Captain Hook has his faction and everything, and in this story he is going after Petro, but in this story the Butcher is kind of like the good guy. I wouldn't really call him a good guy, but in this story he kind of is, and he teamed up with them last issue, and now Winter is kind of going through this test. She's kind of right at the end of this test, basically, and she's up against one of the Never Never boys, the Lost Boys, or but she's kind of going, doing flashbacks with her real father about when he was teaching her boxing and stuff like that. And after the boxing match, he was like, okay, now it's time for you to learn your real lesson. And he was teaching her how to fight dirty, in case it ever needed to come to that kind of thing. And he was telling her about soft spots and stuff like that. and it's basically what she uses to overcome this lost boy right here, and she does end up winning the battle and passing the test that, you know, that the butcher had put forth to test her merit to see if she's the one. But we see that Peter Pan, of course, he's pissed. He's getting all the Lost Boys ready and everything he's got to go after the butcher, and you know, get back Winter. For some reason we don't really know, but he wants Winter, you know, back. There's something special with her, and the butcher sees that as well. The butcher does have like a full out title name. I'm bad with names, so that's that's what I'm gonna call him with. But basically, there's kind of like this whole conversation where, like, you know, she's supposed to be this chosen one who's going to save the day and stuff, and they're kind of breaking it down to her. And, like, for a time, like, Winter's like, man, this is too much, and she kind of breaks away and stuff. They have this whole conversation, which I thought was one of the dopest scenes in this issue, but in the previous issue, Patrio had killed off Tiger Lily. They kind of go off into this whole like origin story between them two about how at one time they were lovers and how it all kind of got started. And you know, in the end he did end up killing her, but he kept her head, and I mean, he's basically talking to her and stuff, and she's talking back, you know, and basically like, you know, conveying like, you know, what's to come, basically his whole rant that he's going to go after and, you know, Winter and stuff like that, and finally kill the butcher. And supposedly there's like this whole thing in the background where like he's not the first like Captain Hook, and that has had that appendage, you know, the same, you know, person missing his left arm with the hook. It like supposedly the way they mention it, it's happened like, you know, 7 or 8 times or something like that. It does tie into the crocodile, like because we do know that Petrio's father is on the back of the crocodile. And they kind of keep going back and forth to the story that it has some merit to the crocodile and you know, his father that's on the back. Basically at this point it's like kind of the butcher kind of catching Winter up to like, you know, what needs to be done and what's a little bit of what's to come before. I'm showing this right here because that is his butcher's knife, and you can see it kind of has the little hook and indentation in it. But basically, they're kind of like moving forward. They're going to meet the last of their allies, and then they're going to like where their home base is, kind of stuff. And they're taking Winter now that she's passed that test. Eventually, they show you that the Lost Boy has been following them and track them and stuff like that. We finally get to meet the other allies, and it's the one part of the story that I've been missing. But Tinkerbell, you know, Tinkerbell is a big part of you know, Peter Pan and all that, and we finally get to see the fairies. Now there is no Tinkerbell in the story, of course, probably due to, you know, Disney owning the rights to Peter Pan and probably original author and stuff like that. But we do get like that there are fairies here, and those are the allies that Captain, you know, the butcher is on his way to go meet up with. They are saved by like this rookie like fairy who's you know, the Lost Boys were tracking him, and they're about to sneak up and try and kill Winter again, and well, not kill her, they're trying to grab her and capture her and take her back to Patrio. And the fairy swoops in, like it's these two fairies, and this one fairy swoops in and ends up like killing the one Lost Boy. Excuse me, I'm getting low. Thank you. But eventually we do see that the good crew, they finally do make it to like the port where the butcher kind of calls his home and everything, where the fairies live. They do show, like at first they're walking by and they show these girls in cages, and Winter throws kind of like a fit about him keeping these women in cages and stuff, and then it turns out that they're sirens, and it was like some hormones they were using to trick her. And the same thing goes, everything's hungry here, so everything's starving and ultra mad, and but basically that's like the island's version of mermaids slash like sirens or whatever. But eventually, kind of, you know, the butcher kind of lays out the plan a little bit, and we get to meet some of the other fairies, and they kind of introduce themselves, and we get some of their names. I want to say there's like 5 main fairies that kind of take place, but we'll get there in a second. because that is where the fourth issue ends off at. And we're going to start up with the fifth issue. Right here, I'm going to show you the cover real quick. I love all the covers. It's amazing. First off, I mean, Phil Buckenham, man, he's definitely moved up to one. I mean, I have to say he's like my third favorite artist right now. I love his art. Okay, so back to the story, right? So as soon as they kind of get there, it jumps forward, and we kind of know, like, basically the story. They're supposed to grab Winter, and they're going to, like, hurry as fast as they can with Winter to get to the Rift. The Rift is like the hole that connects like the real world to Never Never. And since Winter has only been in Never Never for a little bit of time, it's kind of disclosed that Winter still has a mass amount of hope left, and hope is like the necessary item to like have wishes and dreams and stuff like that. But it's also the necessary item to use the pixie dust that the fairies use to fly, and that's why like most everybody can't fly here, because they've been here so long, and the starvation thing, it causes them to lose hope, and so they can't use the pixie dust anymore. So their plan is to get Winter to the Rift and eventually like get Peter Pan to follow her because he wants her for some reason or something like that. But it is disclosed that because they jump through right here, but they kind of start off when everything is like just jumped out. Peter Pan's army has shown up. You know, the butcher even states that, oh my god, it's earlier than expected. They kind of jump backwards. They jump backwards like a little bit before, and they're kind of going back and explaining the plot. Exactly what I just told you about how they're going to kind of like bum rush to the Rift, you know, with Peter Pan in pursuit. But the other part of it ties in with the crocodile and Petro's father. And we do get this one scene where like Petro's father telling him it's not too late to like turn back kind of thing, and Petro is just an evil piece of, you know, I mean, so I mean he's just like really antagonizing his dad and basically blah blah blah, you know, I mean he's just mean and evil, and but they do explain the whole, and that's what this is, the most part of it, and this fairy comes in here and she kind of explains the whole like why she's the necessary piece of the puzzle, why they're all excited, and it's the whole hope thing, and explaining that, you know, she can use the hope to fly using the pixie dust stuff, and basically that's where it is. We get to this point, it's kind of like right at the beginning of the battle, right before Peter Pan shows up, and they're kind of like disclosing a little more of the story, and it's like the last part of it is because they reveal that it's not just Petro's father that's on the back of the crocodile, it's the creator. Like they think it's like the creator of the stories. Even the fairies start talking about like, and they believe that that's why Petro stuck the crocodile on, you know, Petro's father on the crocodile, because he didn't want him to go back to the real world and change the story or whatever. So supposedly it's like the original author of Peter Pan is who's tied to the back of the crocodile, and that's how they're continually like living forever, is because the author got stuck in Never Never and was never able to go back and either continue the story or just stop it in general. So that's the whole plot, is like they're going to trick Peter Pan or Petro away from the crocodile so the rest of the crew can sneak up and kill Petro's father, aka the creator, that's on the back of the crocodile. So then the book jumps back right up here to where, you know, Peter Pan and the Lost Boys and baby crocodiles and the main crocodile like show up and attack Force and stuff, and it's this back and forth. And one of my favorite pages from this book, this whole spread, where like the sirens are killing crocodiles and the Lost Boys are killing pirates and pirates are killing Lost Boys. But eventually it's like this, one of the massive showdowns is Peter Pan versus this version of Hook, you know, the butcher. And Peter Pan just, I mean, decimates. I mean, pretty much he cuts off one of his ears, he cuts off one of his eyes, like he slashes him up to the point. And barely, like, the only reason he stops is because one of the Lost Boys mentions that, hey, boss, Winter's heading to the Rift. So Peter Pan does exactly what they want, and he flies on towards the Rift, you know, trying to capture Winter and make sure she doesn't make it back to the other side. We do see, right before he takes off, that he ends up killing some fairies and some of the pirates and stuff like that before he goes. Of course, it's a war and stuff. But eventually they show both of them, like, and it's this massive, like, back and forth where, like, the people fighting and Never Never have that chance where they're finally able to take the shot and kill the creator, and they do end up stabbing. It's the butcher that ends up, and I think his name is Grieve, but the butcher does end up, like, harpooning the creator on the back of the crocodile, killing him. Winter and Petro do make it through the rift. That's what this scene is right here. And she's basically explaining that she has the last of the pixie dust, that the fairies gave her all the pixie dust, in order, like, in part of the entrapment to bring Peter Pan, to entice him to follow Winter. So Peter Pan at this point knows he's going to need more of the pixie dust kind of thing. Eventually, like, through conversation and stuff like that, Peter Pan being arrogant and stuff like that, Winter eventually lures him close enough where she throws pixie dust in his face. And that's where something weird happened. For some reason, that the next page of this book was missing. That's why I have my phone right here. I do have the last page, and I will show y'all. But basically what happens right here, and I do have the last page given to me by Mr. Mark McCann himself, and it's basically that Winter throws the pixie dust in Petro's eyes, and she kicks him off. At this point, Petro not being able to fly, and they're on, like, a very tall skyscraper somewhere in London. And basically she kicks him off, and the last thing we see of Petro is him falling to his death, and then it kind of cuts over. It jumps back over to, the crocodile, and the crocodile is now dead, and he is kind of, like, upside down. They don't really show the crocodile, but it's more mention of the creator, because it just shows that like, everybody's saying goodbye and this and that, and the creator finally, like, being able to be at peace or something like this, and he ends up, like, disappearing. Okay, so that's where the book comes over. There's no rhyme or explanation on what happened with the book and why this one page was left out the book, because there is more to the book after that page. But after that, it does jump over to, like, Winter and her mom and dad in the real world. And it's basically just this casual conversation, and they walk over to, like, this statue monument of the original author from Peter Pan. And it's supposed to be, in this book, it's H.N. Carey, and I know they did that for the copyright reasons or whatever, because his real name is, because I don't remember offhand, but his real name is James Matthew Barry, so it's real close to, and they do mention that while he was on the crocodile's back, that his name was, what they mentioned here, H.N. Carey, they mentioned his name was Carey. And in real life, the guy who wrote the original Peter Pan was named James Matthew Barry. So it's kind of like they switched it just a little bit, but you can tell who it is. But basically right here, they show him, like, there is this question about, like, Winter's dad asking Winter about, like, would she want to spend, like, forever in Neverland? And she's like, oh, heck no. And they kind of walk off, and at the very end we see in the shadows that, like, a hooded figure that kind of looks like Petro kind of creeps out of the shadows at the very end, and that's where the book leaves off. And that is where, the 5th issue of Never Never ends at. I will say that Mark McCann and Phil Buckenham have told us that there is a volume 2 coming out, a continued story of Never Never. So I'm really interested on how the story is going to continue, since we kind of saw that Never Never, as soon as they killed the creator, Never Never, the land itself, the fantasy land, kind of disappeared or whatever. So maybe there's some other, you know, but that's what good writing is. And maybe my boy Mark McCann, maybe he's got something up his sleeve, you know what I'm saying? But hey, that's my review. You know, I don't know what else to say, man. I love the series. It definitely, I mean, after reading it, it definitely is one of my favorite reads from this year. I love the story. I think altogether it was a great, you know, complete story. It sucks that this one page is missing out of it, but I do know that Heavy Metal is coming out with a reprinted issue that's going to fix it, and they're coming out with a trade and stuff like that too. So don't fear, you know, too far. I will show you the last page, you know, to kind of show you what I was talking about, and then I will let y'all go. Thanks for watching my review. You know, please like, comment, subscribe, you know, yell at Heavy Metal and tell them, you know, about, you know, your love of never, you know, that kind of stuff. But here you go. That's Pedro getting the pixie dust in his eyes, him getting kicked off, kind of falling to, you know, ah! And then right here they just show everybody kind of messing with the crater and kind of like everything like, boop. Alright guys, I will see y'all later.